This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Hold on, stop.
Welcome back to the Shit Show 2.0.
Okay, boomer.
Damn millennials. Wow.
Did not know that. Even flirters who are obviously mentally ill. You want to be my wife?
Oh, this is gonna go downhill real quick.
What is going on? And welcome to Take on the World with
Deb Doherty.
what? Not John?
Or John.
No. And Mike D. Deb Doherty are retired, award-winning, retired
Professional
professional,
broadcaster.
former broadcaster, retired.
Extraordinaire.
So all of that right there.
For what it's worth.
We are here in the absence of John doing a very serious topic, and we couldn't do a serious topic with John here because he just goofs off too much. So, but
Plan B. I'm Plan B.
we have to talk about what we're drinking because me and John always do. And I have a butterscotch moonshine.
From our son's 21st. It was a gift from a friend.
Yes, our son turned 21, and I took him for his very first legal in-bar drink. We had kamikazes, so it's an 80s drink. Go figure.
We're 80s kids.
And we got him a 21st birthday present, which we won't talk about. Mum's a word.
Okay.
He knows. We know. The people who know.
The people who matter know. If you don't know, you don't matter.
Wow. That's a harsh thing to say to our millions and millions of listeners. So we have a topic today that is ripped from the headlines of recent times.
You may have seen a movie or two.
There was a recent Lifetime movie. But before we get to that, we got to talk about Deluxe Edition Network.
Absolutely.
And we are a proud part of Deluxe Edition Network. A group of podcasters, something for everybody. I say it all the time. You're probably sick of hearing it, but I'm going to tell you anyway. If you like sports content, it's there. If you like movie content, it's there. And every month they have spotlight podcasts, plural. There are 2. And in honor of October Horror Month, I am wearing my horror shirt.
And I am decked in fall.
But the deluxe edition also kept the time of year in mind. And there are 2 horror-related podcasts of the month. And one is The Graveyard, and the other is Terror Tuesday. Terror Tuesday is a Instagram-only program. They both cover horror. They both cover the occult. They both cover ghosts and ghouls and
Some of my favorite topics.
like me and John said on our last episode, I love this time of year. The best horror movies come on TV.
I'm just a fan of Supernatural generally.
And both of those podcasts cover Supernatural. So if that's what you're into, you need to check them out. Go to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. Check them out, and then check out the rest of the great podcasts, and then come back here and listen to the best of the bunch.
Okay.
I don't like patting myself in the back, but
Don't you?
I have long arms, so I do it.
As often as possible.
So I'm going to take a sip of my drink. We're going to take a break. And we're back. So we've been seeing a lot of the promos for this program coming on Lifetime. And since we live in Pennsylvania, which is heavily Amish in some areas, I thought, you thought, we thought the Eli Weaver story might be something that we want to cover.
The Amish Stud.
The Amish Stud.
The self-proclaimed Amish Stud.
Yes.
I don't know what's so studly, but okay.
If you haven't seen the Lifetime movie, And I'll tell you from the research, the movie is pretty on par with what the research shows.
I think so.
There are some things that are embellished, but all in all, it's pretty there. So
Yeah, from what I have read and listened to, I think so.
So the Amish Stud is Eli Weaver. He
Or Weaver,
Weaver
if you're Pennsylvania Dutch. Weaver.
From Apple Creek, Wayne County, Ohio.
Which I didn't know. I mean, people think Amish, they think Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, but the highest concentration of Amish population is in Ohio.
Yes, it is. Now there is Amish communities all over the country. There's Amish communities in Iowa, Indiana, obviously Ohio, obviously Pennsylvania, Canada. There's a Amish and Mennonite presence in Canada.
And Mennonite is a more or a less stringent.
So I think of the Mennonites as Lutherans. So Lutherans are Catholic light. Mennonites are Amish light.
That's probably fair.
So this is about 60 miles south of Cleveland. So it's not far outside of Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh area, where the awesome Pittsburgh Penguins play.
Formerly awesome.
They're awesome.
Pittsburgh Steelers. You used to think.
Oh,
the Steelers
formerly.
were awesome.
Yeah, I don't watch football anymore, but we don't talk about that. So the gist of the story is the Amish Stud,
self-proclaimed,
his wife was murdered, and this is the story of how that happened. But I want to give a little background on his wife was Barbara Miller, who was born in 1979. And that community that they were a part of is considered the Old Order Amish.
The Dan something I read. I don't recall, but it is one of the most strict sects of the Amish culture.
So you have three major sects of Amish. You have Old Order, New Order, and I don't know what the third one was because I didn't write it down.
I didn't even read that, so you're ahead of me.
So the Old Order Amish, they're plain clothes, which most Amish are, no electricity, horse and buggy only, although they are allowed to be driven by someone else in someone else's car to get to places that horse and buggies cannot take them. And that's their foot into the modern world.
There are others.
Yes. They are not allowed to own a phone or a cell phone but they are allowed to use somebody else's. And good.
Well, I was going to say in a lot of the communities, there is like a phone booth or an outhouse, if you will, where there is a phone for emergencies.
Yes. And because, look, living in today's world, you need to, why am I getting, it's your phone. You need to put it someplace else. You need to be able to function in the modern world. And I think the Amish understand that.
I personally have a great deal of respect for the Amish. I know some people crap all over them, and there are a lot of stereotypes. Oh, they're all inbred. They abuse their animals. They do this, they do that. But I have a great deal of respect for how they hold to their beliefs.
Well, I was going to say the same thing. The dedication to their beliefs, and to living a simple life.
Sometimes I think I would love that, but maybe for not long term. But I mean, that's why you go camping, right? That's why you go to the woods. You unplug.
You want to get back to nature.
Yeah.
And basically, the Amish live through nature. Like, they're not allowed tractors or motorized farm equipment. They have to. Well, the old order.
No selfies.
When they plow their fields, it's with the horse. Mm-hmm. And I think they get the reputation for animal abuse and whatnot because their animals are work animals. So it's like their tractor or their pickup truck and they want it to function, but they need it to function when they say function. So like, I don't always agree with some of the things I hear but then I'm not there. I don't know. I'm just hearing shit. So they have no television, no computer, no photographs. They're not allowed to take photographs. It's not like stealing their soul, but they don't embrace that technology. Most of them have no education past the 8th grade.
Especially women.
Yes. And I'll say this, like my grandfather, he dropped out of school in the 8th grade. And
Most of our grandparents did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like, now it may seem unusual, but back in the 30s and 40s,
100 years ago,
that was accepted. Like, you were expected to contribute to your household.
and I think that's what most of the community does. I mean, there is an expectation of girls that they will run their household, and a lot of their education, especially past the 8th grade, is in the home. They're taught that is their duty to raise a family and contribute to the home.
And a misogynist would say that's sandwich maker training.
Maybe, but that's, the other thing about the Amish community is it's a choice.
Oh yeah, and we're going to get to that because
Okay.
Barbara Miller, during her Rumspringa, didn't really want to go out and experience this stuff.
She was very devout.
She was, and she embraced the Amish way of life. So,
I just reading about her, I have such an admiration for her. Someone who just stuck to her values. The only shame in it is that she died because of that.
Yeah.
There's no shame in it. She knew who she was. She knew what she wanted. And whether or not I or anyone else agrees with how she chose to live her life, she chose that for herself. There's no more power in the world than making a conscious decision on how to live your own life.
And following through with it.
Absolutely.
So they speak in plain language. Generally, it's either Pennsylvania Dutch or Pennsylvania German, or some Amish speak High German. That's unusual, but my grandfather was a Dutchie. Now, he wasn't Amish, but he was Pennsylvania Dutch, but he also spoke High German. He grew up on a farm. So like, a lot of these things my grandfather could relate to, because they grew up poor. They grew up, simple. And
I think in the counties that we are from in Pennsylvania,
I think they're more understanding of that.
That's common.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for us being 80s kids, our grandparents grew up during the Depression.
Right.
So we were all kind of raised similarly. I know at my grandmother's table, the rule was take what you want, but eat what you take. Nothing was wasted. And it's a very similar culture.
Well, even though I grew up with meager means, and that's what we were taught. If it's on your plate, you eat it. Like, you don't put your plate in the sink with food back on it. And
you eat what was made.
And that was kind of inbred in me. And I'm not saying that's why I'm as big as I am. I love food. I don't give a shit. I'll say it right out. But for the longest time, I would not let a full plate leave a table.
You just don't fill your plate as much.
No. They believe in non-resistance. They do not participate in military service, or engage in violent conflict, which I would question. I find that odd because spousal abuse in the Amish community is common.
Is it, or is that what we're taught?
Well, I'm going to say it's common, and I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Because later on, the church tells Barbara something, and that's why I feel that, even though it's a rumor to me, because I'm not in that community, I feel that it is an accepted thing.
And again, it's borderlining on talking about religion, but there are a lot of people of faith who take bits and pieces of
Yes.
things in the Bible and use them, I think, in my opinion, in a way that's not intended. But
Yes,
that's me.
I agree with that. Child abuse is also not uncommon in the Amish community, but I'm going to say this because it's modern times, and this is where we're hearing this. What I would consider child abuse may be different from what you would consider child abuse, even though we're the same age. We grew up very different. To me, abuse is beating the crap out of a kid every day. To some Karens out there, it's if you swat your kid in the butt, that's child abuse. If you talk harshly to your child, it's child abuse. That's not the kind of child abuse I'm talking about. And if these young Amish kids get a belt across the ass, they may not feel that's abusive, even though some people may see it that way.
Sure. And again, it is a generational thing. I know it was family lore in my family that the older kids, my dad being one of them, they were disciplined with the razor strap. Now the younger kids weren't.
Right. And now you're talking about a community that's living 50, 60, 100 years in the past. Their whole life is lived like that.
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah. So what we may consider abuse, they may not. And I'll give them that. Animal abuse is supposed to be prevalent. In our area, there's a lot of puppy mills.
Yes.
With the Amish community. And I feel like, because I love dogs. Like, there's no secret. I love dogs. I don't care if the dog's mean, not mean. I love dogs, except for the one that's barking right now. Because
love that.
I love that dog, but he annoys the crap out of me.
He's one of those inbred Southern dogs, though. He's not even Amish.
If I see somebody treating a dog harshly,
Poorly.
I get mad.
Or a child.
Yeah. Or yeah, absolutely.
But there's a difference between being strict and being abusive.
So just a short off the track story, because that's how me and John do it.
Okay, I'm along for the ride. It's your show.
You're in my world.
That's right.
So
don't I know it?
I was transferring the title for the motorcycle and the one I sold. And I'm in there and I see this guy come in and he's like smacking this dog in the back of the garage. And I almost kicked that door in and said, like, honestly, I was like, yo, what
you doing?
And then I realized he's playing with the dog. That dog's used to playing like that because he wasn't being mean. It just looked that way. Because then the dog was running up to him and he was jumping on him, he was patting him, but when he came in the door, he smacked him on the ass, and I'm like, I'm gonna kill somebody.
Perception is not always reality.
Yeah. So when I stepped back and watched farther, it was aggressive play, but it was play. That's how they play. So again, it's from the perspective of the person or the community. They may not see it that way. Sometimes I think I do, but anyway, Barbara and Eli Weaver met while they were on a Rumspringa. Now, I have looked at 50 different websites on this case. And again, with this, as so many other things, sometimes things don't jive with each other. So take some of this information with a grain of salt. So Eli embraced the Rumspringa.
I think that's fair.
He was promiscuous. He was drinking. He was going to parties. I honestly think that he didn't want to come back to the Amish world. So if you don't know what Rumspringa is, it's a rite of passage for the Amish, usually mid to late teens.
I think it translates to essentially running around, running wild, something like that.
Yeah. So they go out and explore the outside world without the restrictions of the Amish community. So there's a word for the laws that they have to. It's
Ordenon.
yeah. So they don't have to follow that while they're on Rumspringa, and it's not held against them because they have not been baptized yet.
They're not in the church yet. They're outside the church.
So it allows a teenager to taste the outside world, decide if they want to be baptized, if they want to live in the Amish community, or go be part of the English world.
Which you and I are both pro. We both kind of feel that baptism is an adult decision.
Yes.
It's not something that can be made by children.
Because we're not Catholic. So
that's what it is.
So Eli did jump into his Rumspringa with both feet. Like he was hooking up with women. He was doing all that stuff. Barbara wasn't. Like, she was content to maybe be around some of the stuff, but she spent most of her Rumspringa reading her Bible.
And her books. It was in the film.
Yeah.
They called them bonnet rippers. And I did read that her sister had also said she was a big fan of romance novels. And so that was her.
But the
rebellion.
bonnet rippers were Amish romance novels. So they must have Amish writers that just write.
Well, there are even in the romance world, there are, I don't want to say period books, but there are Amish stories.
So they're G-rated romance books.
I wouldn't read one, but that's just me.
So after Rumspringa, sometime, and I am unclear because the research is so conflicting.
Right. Well, she was born in 1979. I thought he was a little older than her based on the movie, but I don't know when he was born. I did not read that. So they were married, what, by 1999? So
1999,
she was 20. So
yeah, because they were married for 10 years. They had 5 children together.
Which, again, for the Amish community, 5 is not a whole lot. They tend to have very large families.
That's every 2 years.
You need kids to work the farm.
Yeah, truth.
It's just a reality.
Can't raise a barn without some kids. So during their marriage, now this is from the research, not just from the movie. The movie doesn't show it until towards the end, but according to research, he regularly cheated on Barbara with women from outside the Amish faith. He had a secret cell phone. He had profiles on dating sites, and his profile was the Amish Stud.
Right, that's where the name comes from.
And even in his profile, he would put up shirtless profile pictures, which would be completely against the Amish faith. And his tagline was, "Who wants to do an Amish stud?"
Yeah,
like
he was much better looking from the neck down.
I don't know. You know, they're showing this. I don't know. The picture they show of the other woman, she is not attractive at all. But supposedly, now I have not seen a real picture of Barbara Miller.
No, because you wouldn't. There probably weren't any taken.
Right. So
unless they're crime scene photos.
According to everybody, she was very beautiful. She was young and attractive. So I don't.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to be accused of being Johnny Jump Ahead, but it seems to me from what I have read is Eli was very much into oral sex. And in Barbara's religious beliefs, that would have been a no-no. I think probably because there is a Bible verse about spilling your seed. So masturbation, oral sex, in their view, sex would be for producing children, and anything outside that would be a sin, which is why women from outside his community would have been a pull.
Okay. I don't disagree with that. I think
I disagree with the premise, because if you read the Psalms, it's very clear that sex is for pleasure too. But that's just my personal opinion.
I don't. But now I'm taking this from the movie. I'm not taking it from, and that's why
within the bounds of marriage.
I did not want to watch the movie before we did this podcast because I didn't want to be confused with fiction and fact. But according to the movie,
It's very,
she wanted to be intimate with her husband.
but she did not. And this doesn't come from the movie. This comes from her journals. And that's where I read this. He was very much into oral, and she felt that was a sin. And that's what she struggled with within her belief. She wanted to, within the community, a wife should be submissive to her husband.
Yeah.
And she wanted to be submissive to him, but he had some sexual
Deviancy.
predilections.
What she would
that-
consider deviant.
Well, yeah, but anyway, that she felt were at odds with her faith.
Right. And so
Cognitive dissonance.
but she held her ground on that.
Obviously, that's why he shot her. Had her shot.
Well, he didn't shoot her in a stop. You're
Jump
jumping
ahead,
ahead.
jump
Jesus,
ahead.
Johnny, jump ahead.
It's the chair.
Debbie, dance ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, it is the chair. It's those headphones too. So according to the research, and they did not say this in the movie, that children had seen Eli physically abuse Barbara.
What I read was he pushed her around. I never read, and again, that's not right. I'm not saying that, but from what I read, even from what her sister had said, it wasn't like he beat the snot out of her.
Well,
I don't know.
they said physically abusive, and he was also withholding money from her that she would need to care for the children and buy groceries. Now, controlling the money is a
Absolutely.
thing in the Amish community, but he ran a gun shop,
Which was by all accounts successful.
and he didn't just sell to Amish; he sold to the English too. So he was like, a gun shop in Pennsylvania or a gun shop in Ohio is making money.
Well, and the other thing I think that people don't realize about the Amish community is they're very social within their community. So on I believe it's Sundays, they regularly get together for a community meal. And at some point, it's one woman's responsibility to essentially run that meal. And he would withhold money so she couldn't afford to do that, which would bring shame on her.
Right, because he was never frowned upon for it. It always came down on her.
That the woman was doing something.
Yes.
Well, in
that community, things tended to be the woman's fault.
but it's
Which really is
just
not
that community.
It's not too far from the truth. I'm just saying.
Like I said, it's not just that community. Even generally, people tend to ask, well, what'd she do?
So her sister wanted her to report the abuse to the elders,
The bishop.
and this, according to an Amish leader, she would have been asked, "What did you do that your husband would treat you like this?" So even with the abuse or to whatever extent it was, or the withholding of money, she would have been asked, "Well, hold it. What are you doing wrong?"
Well, then because you're not raised to talk like that. Why wouldn't she just say, well, he wants a blowjob and you tell me I can't do that?
I think even in that community, she felt if she reported him, he could end up facing consequences that would ultimately come back on her. If he was shunned from the community, she would have no means to support her kids because women were homemakers, not workers.
She couldn't run the gun shop on her own.
Right. Like the gun shop would go back to his family.
And I think at the time of her death, their oldest son was only 9.
Yeah.
He just had a birthday the day before she died.
So she was in a very difficult situation, I think. Barbara struggled with the marital issues. She wrote in a letter to her counselor.
Which she did. So, yes, she struggled, but even having a counselor, and she did seek counseling for herself. But even that was against her beliefs. And because her husband told her, he knew about it at one point, and he told her she couldn't keep going. And yet she continued. So she was getting
Disobedient.
rebellious.
Well, I would think
I don't blame her.
anybody would at that point. But she wrote in a letter to her counselor, "Where did my friend, love, trustworthy husband go to? He hates me to the core." So
that tells me, though, at one point, she must have felt they had a healthy relationship at one point.
wait, it doesn't seem like that, though.
Well, that's just from the research. But in her mind, at one point, they must have.
Eli, twice during their relationship, during their 10-year marriage, left the marriage and the church and to live as English.
Mm-hmm.
And both times he came crawling back within a few months and begged for forgiveness. Now, so he wouldn't have a means to make money if he left the church.
Well, he would, but he'd have to be creative.
Right. But the gun shop was his family's.
His father's. Yeah.
His father set it up for him to run. So if he steps away from the church, that would be taken from him.
Probably.
So like that's the build up to everything.
But people do leave the Amish community and go on to have successful lives if that's what they choose and want to do.
Right. They find that the rules and whatnot are just too stringent for them, and they don't want to do it. Like some of them leave the Amish community, become Mennonite.
Mm-hmm. That's that's Barbara Raber's story.
Amish light. Mennonite, Amish light. So we're going to take a quick break here. And we'll be right back.
Are you looking for a place for all things horror and don't know where to go?
Well, you've came to the right place, my friend. We are the Graveyard Club podcast. For all your horror needs, visit us on YouTube and Spotify, and you can follow us over on Instagram at the Graveyard Club Pod. See you there.
Ciao.
Hey all you guys and ghouls, it's your ghostess with the mostest, Amber Brooke here, and I just want to tell you a little about Terror Tuesday. Well, Terror Tuesday is an Instagram live show where I talk about horror, conspiracy theories, serial killers, supernatural stuff, and so much more. And I discuss it with some super special horror-loving guests. So if you like blood, gore, spooky, scary stuff with a hint of comedy, Terror Tuesday is for you. You can tune in on my channel, Amber.Brook32, to catch one. Tune in, or else. Relax, I can't see, but it's just ketchup. Nope, that's blood.
I want to talk about Copper John's.
Oh,
beard care.
Oh, yes, sir. I bought the.
I know, that's why I wanted to do this, because I know you bought the soap.
I don't remember what the name of the soap was. You kind of caught me off guard. It was something coastal or whatever, and it lasts forever, and I love it. I was so clean, my face wasn't breaking out, and then I just felt squeaky clean when I was done with it. You know what I mean? Like you don't.
I know
feel
what you mean.
Greasy, and you can use it. I used it on my hair, face, whatever. And then when I got out of the shower, I usually don't have to shave because these little pubes don't grow too fast.
10-4.
But
I got to shave every day.
I did buy the beard butter, and I put that on, and the fringe is like it's more controlled. And then when I'm done with wiping it on my beard, I just rub it in my hair, and I'm good to go. And I smell fucking amazing.
I also, after you said you love the soap, I bought some soap. I got cherry something.
Oh yeah, you did say the cherry one smells amazing.
Fucking smells amazing. When I got the package and I would squeeze the package and air would come out of the package.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my god, that's so good.
Yeah,
and then I got the lime basil.
I would surmise probably anything they sell smells amazing.
Yeah,
And it's all natural stuff.
And I use the beard butter. Now, we bought this stuff. Like,
well, but hold on, back up. I'm so impatient.
Somebody was impatient.
I bought the stuff even though somebody has a discount code.
And that discount code is going to be right up top here.
And I didn't remember what it was. And I texted him and he didn't get back to me. And I was like, yeah, screw it. I'm going to buy it. So I paid full price for it, which is fine. I don't mind donating or spending money on a good product. And what I got was a awesome product.
Now, I have said this before. Everybody has their favorite beard and soap and whatnot. I was using Duke Cannon soaps, and I like them.
See, I did not like them.
I did.
I didn't like them.
Oh, too bad for you.
I think the smell did not. It wasn't strong,
and it didn't stay.
Yeah,
it didn't hold. But the Copper Johns, the scent stays with you.
It stays.
So everybody has their favorite. We like these. We bought these. We're using these. If you have a beard or
pube hairs
on your face, and you know, or you're looking for a decent soap to use, check them out. And you could check them out and get the discount.
And listen, I'm a big guy, and I got to shower regularly, and sometimes the stuff you get at the store just does not do the trick. You stink after you shower, and this stuff, I guarantee you will not smell after you will smell great after you shower.
Truth. So check out Copper Johns. I have a direct link for the discount in the description, and I have the discount code above us if you just want to go to their website and check it out. And we're back. So we were talking about Eli and Barbara's relationship. So let's jump over to the other side. So Eli had relationships with several women outside the Amish community.
And they know that through his online activity.
Yes. They have text messages. They have like, once they found out he had a phone, they had everything, pretty much everything they needed.
Well, as most of us would. If someone got a hold of your phone or my phone or anyone out there, they'd know your entire life. It's all on the phone these days.
So there was a couple women that had nothing to do with the Amish community. One of them he had lived with for a short period of time before he came back to the community again. But there's this Barbara Raber. Apparently she, as you said, she was formerly Amish, married, mother of 3. And I guess you said her husband was...
She left the Amish community because her husband was Mennonite.
Okay.
So she was a Mennonite.
So she could drive a car. So she was known as a taxi lady. So if anybody in the Amish community needed a ride someplace where your horse and buggy couldn't go, she would drive them. And apparently Barbara Raber and Eli were having an affair. Now, I don't know this from the research. I know this from... I think this from watching the movie. He really took advantage of the women that he was involved with.
Yeah, and I think especially Barbara Raber, I would like to know more about her. She was either not very smart or just easily emotionally manipulated.
Well, she was...
Maybe both.
According to her picture, she was extremely unattractive too.
Well, but look, that's common in these things. And I'm not saying this because I'm not anti-male, because Pamela's smart. I mean, women do this too. They grab on to someone who's mentally unstable or less than because they're easily manipulated. And I think that's the case you have here. He could manipulate her. He tried to manipulate other women, and they just wouldn't fall for it because he kind of put out there, oh, if my wife were dead, we could be together. And there's nowhere in my mind that I think that if they had gotten away with it, Eli Weaver would have gone into a relationship with Barbara Raber.
No, I think he would.
She thought so.
Yeah.
And that's common in these types of situations, even like I said, with Pamela Smart, although she did get pregnant. So that might be a little different. But you see that the stronger personality globs on to someone who is much weaker because they're easily manipulated and they can get them to do their will. And he did talk to her because they have it in text messages. And he did talk to the other women about essentially, well, I don't know if it was actually so blatant as, would you kill my wife? Or if I killed my wife, or if my wife were dead,
then we could be together.
Right. And she just ate that up, which is.
But when she was questioned, she told the police that their relationship had ended 6 months prior to everything happening.
Which wasn't true because the text messages prove otherwise.
Right. And they didn't know that because they didn't have his phone.
Until they found it because it was in her name.
Right. The phone was registered in her name. So the movie says she put him on her family plan.
She wasn't the brightest bulb.
Well, apparently her husband wasn't either. I don't know that from any research, but the movie made him out to be
a dullard.
Yeah. The fact is that Eli and Raber had talked about getting rid of his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And like, she was like, oh, really? We could be together if that happened?
We could poison her.
Yeah, we could poison her.
What about that bug poison?
Yeah, medication or what kind of poison do farmers use to kill bugs? And so they went through all of that. And in fact, there was an attempt prior to the successful attempt. Now, I don't know how much heart was put into that attempt. They tried to do it with was it medication or was it the poison?
In the movie, it was medication.
Right, but I think someplace I read it was the poison. And it failed. So, they even talked about burning down the house. And
he didn't really care if the kids were.
Barbara said, well, what happened? What if the kids are in the house? Well, they'll go to heaven because they're innocent. Like wanting to kill your wife is one thing, but wanting to kill your children?
Cognitive dissonance.
No, that's
research it.
So there were text messages going back and forth. He basically talked her into, look, here, I'm not gonna be here this day, so I'll have an alibi. Mm-hmm. Why don't you just show up and shoot her?
Where did the gun come from? Did they ever say? Because I never read that.
Well, it did not come from his gun shop. They did say that.
Really would have been stupid.
It wouldn't have been really because.
Well, if she had broken in, but she didn't. No. There were no signs of forced entry or anything.
But if the gun had come from his gun shop and it was, you don't have to transfer or register a long gun. It was a shotgun. It was a 410 shotgun that killed her. He sells to the Amish community. So that would not be odd that a Mennonite would go to an Amish gun shop to get a gun. Like, that could be explained away. Other things couldn't.
I like the text messages.
The text messages, you couldn't get away from them. In fact, when they were planning this, they used her computer to search all these things on poisons, and
it was a ridiculous amount of research that she had. Well, they said she. I would assume it was they.
Well, I would think so too, because he was leading her around the whole time.
I think so. That's in these types of situations, though. That's common, whether it's a man exerting influence over a woman or a woman over a male. That's just what happens.
So he made plans to go fishing with a Mennonite friend, and the Mennonite friend came to the house to get him. Took him a while to get up. Came out. They went fishing, and the whole time he made comments while they were fishing that aroused suspicion in his friend.
Well, I had read this in the official case because it was referenced in the movie, and it is true. There was a thunderstorm that night, and she had her kids and her sister's kids that night, and some of the children were in bed with her, and I guess Eli had come home and he did take the kids out of the bed and put them back in their room that night,
which they should be. So,
well, they heard
just saying.
Their son was, I guess, sleeping in the living room adjacent, and
Well, the son wanted to stay up for him.
he
He wanted to see his dad.
He had heard what he thought was thunder, and they assumed that was the shot.
So in that case, he was home when it happened.
Maybe.
And I think he left at 4 a.m. to go fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So it may have been after 4 a.m. that the son heard that. Either way, some
kids were there.
Somebody came in the house, kids in the house. If
you're going to kill me, I hope at least our kids aren't around.
She was shot with a 410 shotgun at 4:30 a.m. So he left at 4:30.
It's right around the same time. He told her where to park.
Right.
He told her what to do.
Raber admitted to going to the home with the shotgun and said, I never intended to kill her. The gun went off accidentally. I never intended for anything to happen, but when it did, I was like, oh, crap.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't seem like she's really smart.
No, because then later on she changes her story and said, oh, I don't even remember.
But she was, at the same time she didn't remember, she was telling on herself.
Mm-hmm.
So now the police are trying to put this together. What was the date of the murder?
June 2009.
Right, but
it's on my phone. I can't get it.
Let me look at this other thing here. Did I say at the top here when it happened? No. I'm trying to put the timeline together with
June 2nd, 2009.
Okay.
One of her kids found her.
Right. So the oldest son found her, went over to the neighbor, said, hey, there's something wrong.
They go to the community phone.
They go to the community phone. They call the police. Police come. They're trying to get a hold of him. There's no way to get a hold of him, the husband, Eli. And he's just fishing with his buddy, having a good time. During the investigation, they found out about Barbara. They found about the other women, but they couldn't, without the text messages, they couldn't pin nothing to him.
Mm-hmm.
Eli and Raber had known each other for about 10 years, about the same amount of time he knew his wife, and they had been in a on and off sexual relationship for about 6 of those 10 years. So I'm looking for timeline here. Accidentally went up, blah, 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 blah. Furthermore, a voicemail left for Eli on June 3rd said, Eli, you can run, but you can't hide. We'll get you. Obviously, we made him. Oh, so he tried to fake this phone call with this fake voicemail on the community phone. So since it's a community phone, somebody else would get it and then come back and give him the message. And that's what they said. You can run, you can hide, but obviously we made a mistake last night. We got the wrong person.
Yeah.
Trying to make it seem like there was some kind of illicit business deal, like even casting a shadow on himself to make himself look innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear that? Is that a siren?
I don't know. I heard Jack's
Oh, no,
back
that's the backup beeper on the truck.
there. I did not read much about the actual court,
I did read a little bit about it.
about what happened.
It didn't seem to take long. But I'm trying to find out when he was arrested.
It seems there was an overwhelming amount of evidence.
So Raber had bought the 410 shotgun in November of 2008. In the end, Eli pled guilty to being complicit in the murder in August 2009. Agreed to testify against Barbara Raber. In September 2009, then 29, he was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Now, he is up for parole June 6th of next year.
I hope he never gets
2024.
What he took from those kids, from her family, from her community, I hope he never gets out.
So he is currently incarcerated in the Grafton Correctional Institution in Lorain County, Ohio.
Will we perhaps learn a little bit more about that facility at some point?
Nah,
Oh.
that was nothing.
County facility?
No, that's that'd be the state.
Oh.
Ohio State facility. At Reber's trial, the defense claimed that Eli was a manipulator as well as the killer, which I very much believe he's a manipulator.
Oh, absolutely.
But she obviously killed Barbara. Actually, obviously killed Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, she was found guilty of aggravated murder in October 2009. She was 39. She was sentenced to 23 years to life behind bars. She is serving her time in Ohio Reformatory for Women in Marysville, Ohio. You won't hear nothing about that one either. And she is due for parole on June 4th, 2032.
Almost on the anniversary.
So I'll be retired for 7 years, huh?
I won't be. Unless you win the lottery.
Yeah.
Then it's Costa Rica, baby.
Yeah, I kind of rushed through this, but there's not a whole lot of information about this.
Not
Because it's so new and current. And what's 2009? That's still a good chunk of time ago.
I think a lot of it has to do with the closeness of the community.
Absolutely. Because the community leaders didn't want to participate in the investigation, the bishop. He basically said, we'll handle this ourselves.
Yeah. And they can't.
But they wouldn't out and out obstruct the investigation, but they wouldn't help it in any way.
It seems to me that her sister did.
Well, from the movie.
Well, not only that, her sister did turn the diary over. And Barbara Weaver's diary
was very specific.
Oh yeah, she really kept notes.
So, what she was told by her counselor was, what you need to do is you need to keep a diary. You need to keep a journal of every transgression that he makes, with times and dates. Be as specific as you can. And when the time comes, you can give that to the bishop, and they can't deny if you're very specific.
And unfortunately, it didn't help her in that area, but it did help the police investigation into her murder.
Well, I have to say this is a situation where the Amish community let her down. Not only because when she did ask for help, she didn't get it, but because she felt like she couldn't continue to ask for help because of the way the community is.
And the other thing that we did not mention is his father was a pastor.
Yes.
And his brothers.
Yes.
Very involved in the community and probably protected him for a long time. I'm not saying they protected him against this murder, but I'm sure they looked the other way.
His father was very instrumental in bringing him back to the community,
getting him the house, the business,
basically saying, look, forgiveness is a part of our religion. So,
which is true.
I'll forgive you, but you have to never do it again. And then he did. And then he forgave him again. And he brought him back, set him up, and he continued to do it. He just didn't get caught again or there was enough rumor and people talked.
Well,
But
when you don't have a TV, you don't have radio, gossip is your pastime.
and they've said this in the movie, but I also know from the Pennsylvania Dutch and the Mennonites, and I work with a Mennonite gentleman, and well, I don't talk to him about that kind of thing. Listening to him tell stories, the rumor mill is alive and well in the Amish community.
They're great storytellers because that's what they have. For sure.
That and bonnet rippers.
Bonnet rippers. I love that.
That's pretty much it. And it's sad because I would really have liked to get more in depth into the planning of this, but you're right. The community is so closed.
And I just want to know, it's 2009. I would love to know that her children are okay, that her sister got custody of them and they were loved.
Her sister would have got custody, period. That's how the community is. They would have went to the sister. And there'd be no shame on them because they're still innocents.
Right.
Just like Eli said, well, if they die in a fire, they'll go to heaven because they're innocent. So
yeah, because there's a whole family here that was lost because of two people's selfishness, or I don't know. I'm too judgy.
But I'm gonna throw pictures up of him and her, Barbara Raber, and there's no pictures of the wife, unfortunately. But I just don't see.
I think, what I take away from this is Barbara Weaver just must have been a beautiful person inside and out. And she is someone who I think I would have liked to have known.
Well, you see her sister was willing to go against the church and the wishes of the church to give the diary to the police, which she was basically told not to do.
But even from a religious standpoint, a standpoint of faith, justice is very prevalent. And I'm sure that's what she was looking for, justice for her sister.
Well,
she couldn't help her with that in her day-to-day life. She sure as hell was going to make sure she got it in her death, and they did.
So that is
the Amish Stud.
The Amish Stud, the Eli Weaver story. I would say the Lifetime movie is worth a watch.
It's pretty accurate from what I've read.
It's close to most. Like while we were watching the movie, first I said I wish I wasn't watching this before we did the podcast. But as we were watching, I'm like, well, yeah, they did say that, and they did like my research showed that, and my research showed that. Now they didn't say that, but you could see how that could be thrown in the mix. But again, like you said, it's the Amish community, and they're not going to speak on these things to the English.
So there is one more thing I know you found very interesting before we wrap.
So Eli Weaver's attorney recalls seeing about 150 Amish people show up to Eli Weaver's murder trial when he was allocuting. So he sat in the witness box, and he looked out and saw all these Amish in the courtroom, and basically they said it was standing room only. Like there were no seats left. There were people standing in the back against the wall. And when he sat in the witness box and looked out at them, they all turned their head and looked away, which I thought was like, okay, a statement by the Amish community. Look, you're done.
Shunned.
The attorney described Eli as being deflated and physically shamed by that.
As he should be.
But for someone who wasn't living in the Amish community for real,
he was living in two worlds, and he couldn't choose between them. He wanted his cake and eat it too.
But I thought that was pretty interesting that now all of a sudden the Amish want to show up and, okay, now you're shunned. But when they could have helped Barbara, they didn't. Or she felt she couldn't go to them because of the
Or
ways of the
none.
community. I don't know. It just annoyed me. So that was just one thing I wanted to throw in there that I had completely forgot about until here at the very, very end.
It's an interesting fact.
So now we have taken on Eli Weaver and the murder of his wife, Barbara Weaver. You go take on the world and don't piss anybody off enough to murder you.
This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Hold on, stop.
Welcome back to the Shit Show 2.0.
Okay, Boomer.
Damn millennials. Wow.
Did not know that. Even flirters who are obviously mentally ill. You want to be my wife?
Oh, this is gonna go downhill real quick.